So today we'll discuss X-ray diffraction. Okay, so how the instrument, what is the basic principle behind this X-ray diffraction? Then what are the instrumentation part and how we prepare the samples and how the material should be analyzed. So just I'll glance through my slides so that it will give you a broad idea. Okay, so whenever light passes through a pinhole area, there is small hole. So the light generally or other system of waves actually they will interfere in between themselves. Okay, so that may be a constructive interference, that may be a destructive interference. When constructive interference occurs, then the light will be more. That will increase the light intensity, whereas destructive interference may decrease the intensity of the light and ultimately we got a darkness. So if you see this graph, it is very easy. When light passes through these pinholes, it will interfere and give us the dark spot and the light spot. So where the constructive interference occurs, we got the light spot, and that actually the basic principle through which we are trying to understand our material with the help of X-ray diffractometry. So this is a very simple diagram where you can understand the X-ray is having a shorter wavelength. Okay, so higher frequency energy wave. So that we use for our specific analysis. So how X-ray generates? You see when actually this electron has sufficient energy to excite an electron in the inner cell. So once you have excited an inner cell, so the due to the excitation, electron will move from the outer cell. Okay, outer cell. As the electron falls in the inner cell, so automatically you have a vacant electron cell. So automatically from outer cell, one electron will fall, and some energy will emit in the form of X-ray or maybe in other form also. Okay, so it may have different types of cell vacancy and your different types of your generated energy. Okay, that we use for our specific analysis of with the help of X-ray diffractometry. Okay, so diffraction method can identify chemical compounds from their crystalline structure, not from their composition or chemical elements. That means if you have a specific or same composition, let's say different CaCO3, it can stay in different crystal structural form. So the chemical composition is same, but the structures are different. So using this X-ray diffractometry or diffraction, we could identify the crystal structure also. Okay. So we have X-ray diffractometry, electron diffractometry, diffraction, or neutron diffraction. All we could use to, but here we will discuss only X-ray diffraction in our course. So this X-ray diffractions is non-destructive analytical techniques for identification and quantification, quantitative determination of the various crystalline forms known as phases. Okay. Identification is achieved by comparing the X-ray diffraction pattern. So you can understand the actually d-spacing on a crystal plane. Okay, spacing also, and you could understand each and every. So crystallography, generally mineralogy people or crystallographic people are used in very high rate, but also as a geoscientist or the petroleum engineers, we also use this X-ray diffraction for identifying our different phase. And at the end, I will just discuss some of the part. Okay, so a technique used to determine the atomic and molecular structure of a crystal, in which the crystalline atoms cause a beam of incident X-ray to diffract into many specific directions. So the atomic planes of the crystal cause an incident beam of X-ray to interfere with one another as they leave the crystal. That means you have a specific crystal plane. The incident beam of X-ray will come, they will fall and they will move away from this plane. And during the moving away from that, they have actually interfere one with another. Okay, and this system of X-ray directed at the crystal diffract and scatter as they encounter atoms. The scattered ray interfere with each other to produce spots of different intensities that can be recorded in the film or maybe measured with respect to a certain angle, and that is we use for identification of specific minerals or crystals. Okay, so it's a very simple Bragg's law we use. So what is there? If you see the incident beam 1 and 2 is coming from here. Okay, so these are the planes. Planes mean crystal planes. Atomic arrangement in a planar fashion. So they will come. So once the incident beam fall on it, they will actually interact with the atoms and they will diffract in this direction. So when you have this X-ray beam incident, so 1 and 2 are diffracted by the two crystal planes A and B. The deflected waves will not be in phase except when the following. So once you have this following relationship, that means this relationship, then they will interfere in the positively and they will give you the illumination or light. So Bragg's diffraction by crystal planes, the path difference between beam 1 and 2 is 2 lambda. Lambda is the actually basically the frequency. Okay, so this is how we try to understand. Okay, so the above equation is the basic law of diffraction called Bragg's law. So this is actually Bragg's law. We extensively use this Bragg's law to understand the distance of the crystal planes. Okay, so Bragg's law can be simply obtained by calculating the path difference between the two beams in the provided figure. If you could see, okay, so by just using the trigonometric formulations, we could understand the path difference between this and this. Okay, diffracted beam 1 and 2. Okay, so that actually help us to understand. Okay, so crystalline substance, so that you already studied during early time or plus 2 level or maybe after also. So they are a specific arrangement having different crystalline planes, and that plane actually we try to identify during this study. Okay, so this is actually a slightly detailed part, which many cases we generally don't use as geoscientists, but those who are working on the crystallography or maybe the mineralogy part, identification of specific mineral, crystal plane, crystal structure, atomic arrangement, then people used it. Okay, so that's why we were able to obtain information on the spacing between atomic planes of the crystals when constructive interference is detected at the given incident angle and the wavelength of the incident beam based on Bragg's law. Knowing the spacing of crystallographic planes by diffraction methods, we can determine the crystal structure of minerals. For example, the plane spacing of cubic crystals. So cubic, if the length is A, lattice parameter, so HKL is actually having a, you have a Miller indices actually. Okay, HKL. So you can understand this Miller indices actually, HKL. So through which we could just understand how the actually different orientation of this crystallographic plane we could understand. So this is generally okay. So different types of diffraction methods are there. Okay, so in our case we discuss mainly in the powder form of X-ray diffraction. Okay, so many people are using single crystal diffraction, also powder rotating crystal diffraction, so that for specific understanding or specific work actually people are using it, but in our case we use only the powder diffractometer here, powder diffraction. Okay, so what it is actually, X-ray diffractometry, the most widely and X-ray diffraction technique in mineral characterization, was originally used in examining the crystal structure of powder samples. Thus, traditionally it is called X-ray powder diffractometry. In fact, polycrystalline aggregate solids other than powders are commonly examined by this technique. Okay, so this in X-ray beam, a single, you can understand here, a incident beam is coming and we have a sample holder here. We may make it powder samples and put it here, and then it will diffract and it will receive by a specifically is a recorder, or you can say a recorder. Okay, so that actually we try to understand how each and every material is different from other materials, and from either comparing with the standard material or by our own means we try to identify a specific mineral with the help of that. So this is the instrumentation part, what it is there. If you see, you have a source here, X-ray tube, or it is a source, then you have some slits, then again you have a sample holder, then again you have a slit, and it is going to a detector. So the basic function of a diffractometer is to detect X-ray diffraction from minerals and to record the diffraction intensity as a function of diffraction angle. So it is not the diffraction of this angle, it is actually, here we have a samples, the light is entering into here, and when it is falling on the crystal plane, actually that angle we are trying to, incident beam and that specific crystal plane angle. Okay, so initially it was an X-ray source, special slit, solar slit, set of closely spaced thin metal plates to prevent beam divergence. So here we are putting so many parallel metal plates so that it will converge. Okay, then samples, it is falling on the sample specimen, diffracted beam, then it will diffract. Okay, from the convergent specimen, from a convergent beam to a so it will converge. Okay, it will converge again, then it will pass through the slit again, and then it is entering to a detector. Okay, so that actually the specific arrangement. So now if you just see the diffracted X-ray beam needs to pass through a monochromatic filter. Okay, so commonly the monochromatic is placed in a diffracted beam path instead of incident beam path. So here, monochromator. Okay, so this arrangement can suppress wavelength other than, so because we are measuring, because K alpha has been, if K alpha is our source type of X-ray source, then you can only take only that specific wavelength X-ray, but we will just decrease the other part. Okay, so that is how we are using monochromator to just eradicate the other X-ray rays. Okay, so relative movement among the X-ray tube specimens and the detector ensure the recording of the diffraction intensity in the angle of 2 theta. So this is the angle. Okay, so the theta angle is not the angle between the incident beam and the specimen surface. So you see here is your sample holder. So this is not the angle actually we are measuring. So is the angle between the incident beam and the crystallographic plane that generate diffraction. So this is actually the diffraction of the crystal through the crystallographic plane which is within the sample. So majority of commercially available diffractometer using the Bragg's Brentano arrangement in the X-ray incident beam is fixed. So that means here you fixed, X-ray source is fixed, but sample holder is changing. Okay, but here it is not there. Okay, so the detector also rotates around the axis perpendicular to the plane of the figure, but its angular speed twice the sample angle. So what sometimes we have this movement, sometimes we have the detector movement also. Okay, so that automatically we can measure the 2 theta. So 0 to 2 theta between the sample and the detector rotation. Okay, so that means how much you wanted to measure that 2 theta angle. So your this detector should move very fast for measuring that. So we have lot more arrangement for the instrumentation part. Here you can see this technique of thin film X-ray diffractometer. So now with the advent of the different thin film, okay, so now here you see the angle is very low, less than 1 degree also. Okay, so in this it is not suitable for thin film samples such as thin film or coating layers. The technique of thin film X-ray diffractometer uses a special optical arrangement for detecting the crystal structure of thin film and coatings on the surface. Now you can understand nanometer level film we are preparing or making, or we are trying to understand their features also, their structure also. So in that case specifically we are using this arrangement. The incident beam is directed to the specimen at an angle, glancing angle usually less than 1 degree, and the glancing angle is fixed during operation, and only the detector rotates to obtain the diffraction signals of the, so that means this detector will move. So what you are with the help of actually your so this is what try to understand, this part will rotate, not the sample holder or the X-ray source. Okay, so the monochromator is placed in the optical path between the X-ray tube and the specimen. So I told you, so that it will eradicate the other ray also. Okay, not between the specimen and the detector. The small glancing angle of the incident beam ensures that sufficient diffraction signals come from the thin film or a coating layer instead of the substrate. So this is what is the special arrangement for measuring your very low angle information also. Okay, low angle XRD pattern. So what may happen for this? Okay, so you see, in ideal condition, an X-ray beam focuses on a specimen and the intensity of diffraction from the specimen is detected accurately at the 2 theta angle. So what we are trying to get certain information here itself. Okay, but in many cases, so your error may occur. Okay, the focusing arrangement in the diffractometer, however, cannot ensure true focusing due to features of the X-ray source and the specimen. So for this also, for sample locations also, maybe slight deviation, here you won't get the focus in the detector. Okay, because detector is moving in a circular path. So once your focus is not there, that means you will not get actual your diffractive graph. Okay, so that means your axial divergence error. Okay, your sample may not be flat. Okay, so that can not properly deflect. Specimen transparency error. You may have not the thin samples or maybe sufficient transparency of your sample. So that's why depending on your specific arrangement, your accuracy of the measurement should be determined. So that's why when we are trying to use certain sort of analysis, we should be very careful what sort of instruments we are using and how we are preparing our samples also. Okay. So this is a present day we have the, besides conventional X-ray diffraction, high resolution X-ray diffractometry was developed in recent years. High resolution X-ray diffraction is mainly used for examining the crystal quality of thin films and epitaxial layers on a single crystal substrate. So we are now making thin films of nanometer thickness, and we are trying to understand the structure also. So that's why you see different way we are trying to characterize our material. So thin film, your different solar cell, we have photovoltaic cell, we are trying to characterize, because we have different sort of sophistication is required to get the accurate result or accurate information for a specific design material from our side. Okay. So this is a simple arrangement. Now we need to discuss about the samples and how we acquire the data and what are the problems involved when we are preparing our samples or when we are acquiring our data. Okay. So the X-ray diffractometer was originally designed for examining powder samples. However, the diffractometer is often used for examining samples of crystalline aggregates other than powder. Okay. So now different types of single crystal X-ray, XRD, then polycrystalline or maybe powder samples, maybe different types. Okay. So solid samples and even liquid can also be examined. Importantly, samples should contain a large number of tiny crystals, which randomly orient in three-dimensional space, because standard X-ray diffraction data are obtained from powder samples of perfectly random orientation. So you can understand now we have liquid crystals also, small tiny crystals, and they can change our complete science in the future also. It's still already there. You see whatever we are having, our computer screen, our TV screen, all are having very small design crystal. So to understand or to get the desired accuracy, we need to understand each and every crystal structure very nicely. Okay. So the relative intensity among different diffraction peak of non-powder samples can be different from the standard, because perfect randomness of grain orientation in solid samples is rare. So when you are putting our samples into a sample holder, that time your perfect orientation may not be there. That's why, okay, the best sample preparation method are those that allow analysts to obtain the desired information with the least amount of treatment, because chemical contamination may occur during the sample treatment. So this is what we are trying to prepare our samples. So what is there? This is how it works. So once you have the X-ray tube here, source of X-ray, you have the X-ray beam is coming, it is falling on your samples. Okay, then you have your crystals, samples are here, and it is diffracting and giving you a pattern which is here. Okay, it's a film. Okay. The 2D image taken in different rotations are converted to 3D models of the electron density map by the method of Fourier. So that means different people are trying to understand their 2D to 3D configuration and trying to understand the proper characterization of a specific samples, maybe a design samples, maybe a specific natural samples. Okay. So this is what the thin film we could, photographic film we could put and try to understand the dotted line here. So these are actually the spots where you will get. So once you get it, that will help us. Okay, 100 crystals, so that the diffraction beam from continuous cones, a circles of film is used to record the diffraction pattern as shown. Each cone intersect the film, giving diffraction lines. The lines are seen as arcs on the film. Okay, so that means that pattern will give us some idea about the crystal structure, atomic arrangement, and everything. Okay. So this is generally for different types of different way of looking another data acquisition. Okay, so it's a diffractometer with 2 theta value. This is a 2 theta angle. What we discussed, what is 2 theta? So incident beam and the diffracted beam is having a 2 theta angle, and that we are trying to measure. Okay. So a diffractometer records changes of diffraction intensity with 2 theta. So this is intensity, relative intensity. You can see you're changing, and how the theta value is. With change of theta value, your intensity is changing, and we have certain values here. So these are nothing but the Miller indices of the corresponding crystallographic plane. Okay, so 1 is the same where 333 or 222. Okay, so here it is not there. So you can see 110 and 220 is the repeating of the plane at different distances. Okay, so a diffractometer records changes of diffraction intensity with 2 theta. The diffractometer records the diffraction intensity starting from as low as 2 theta. So many instruments are there. Normally powder samples, we generally don't go beyond 5 degree, less than 5 degree. So you require a special arrangement to get clear picture or clear data below 5 degrees. So in wherever you go, most of the people will give you either above 10 degree or maybe sometimes above 5 degree. But once you ask the data for less than 2 degree or less than 5 degree, then with special arrangement is required to get the things done. Okay. So the number of intensity peak located at different 2,3 provide a fingerprint of a crystalline solid, such as here is the Al23. Each peak represents diffraction from a certain crystallographic planes. Matching on obtained peak spectrum with standard spectrum enable us to identify the crystalline substance in a specimen. So what we do, we get this pattern. Now on the basis of our different set of standard value of standard minerals, we try to understand. So you see here you have a diamond shape, it is for Al23, and this is a mixture of silicon and your Al23 mixture. So you can understand which is for silicon and which intensity is for at what angle. So these are what standard value. So we are now matching with the standard value, trying to characterize or identify the specific crystals or mineral present. Okay. So this is the graph of NaCl powder. Okay. So here you can see this is 111, 222, and we have 333. So to repeat. Okay, so that means the same crystal plane is repeating at a certain distance. Okay, this. So similarly, we can understand this is our kaolinite samples. Kaolinite samples is a mixture of kaolin clay samples. So we know 12 point some value is the clay sample. So we see initially this is a major dominated clay samples, and we have other minerals are also 26 is quartz. Okay, so we have feldspar. So that means in a mixture samples also we could identify different minerals present, and I'll just discuss you afterwards how this intensity is used for intensity, and particularly the area under this graph is considered to quantify the specific mineral present. Okay, minerals and their specific volumetric proportion present. Here I put a specific graph to give you some idea how we use for our different research work. Okay, so here the below graph is actually a bentonite clay. So what we just try to show people in our research paper. So this is bentonite. When you use, we actually use this bentonite for understanding the low saline water flooding incident event. Okay, so we have this S1, S2, S3 are 3 different crude oil. We keep the bentonite for 2 months with different crude oil. We have characterized the crude oil earlier, and then once the crude oil, and we wash the clay after 2 months of wetting it, then we have seen there is a certain difference in specific parameters in the bentonite clay also. Okay, so that we have specifically characterized how much the de-spacing has increased. Okay, and what are the materials present, and that's why we characterize and we show people. Okay, after waiting for 2 months, some component of crude oil enter into the clay interlayer structure, and that is the depending on the type of crude oil present, because we have different polar components present in the crude oil. So that we have justified with the help of this diagram. So you could understand how to prove or disprove something. You need to characterize your material with the help of XRD also. Okay. So then you see here the spectrum matching is determined by the position of the different peak maximum and the
Sir, the video is paused.
yeah, just let me just okay, actually some problem. Now it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we do actually, once we get the information in form of spectra, okay, graph, okay, it's called diffractograph, okay, gram. So that is actually spectrum matching is determined by the position of the, so you may have a standard value for a specific minerals or crystals, so that we can use. Okay, so in the modern diffractometer, data acquisition and treatments are mainly done by computer. So you may have a standard set of graphs present in your computer softwares. So what you could match it with your computer software to understand what minerals present in your samples. Okay, so to obtain accurate, adequate and data of sufficient quality for identifying a material, the following factors are important. What? Choose the 2 theta range. So once you know your specific crystals having a 2 theta range of, let's say, 10 to 15 degree or maybe 20 degree. So if you go for a low angle, you may not get the desired accuracy. So what your different parameters, when you are selecting for analysis, your parameters should be very accurate, or maybe your resolution, you will get the desired resolution when you fix your parameter during your data acquisition. Okay, so commonly a range of 5 degree to 65 degree necessary with an workout unknown material. So what generally, if you wanted to get, so 5 degree, I told you, if you are going less than 5 degree, then you may get certain problems, because at that time, you less than 5 degree, you require really dense data. That means the step size should be very small. Okay, so choose the X-ray radiation. So I discussed in the very early, we may have a K alpha, K beta. That means different X-ray are emitting from the your different samples. So copper K alpha is the most popular radiation source used in diffractometry because it's short wavelength. Okay, so you can see here we use different types of radiation material: chromium K alpha, cobalt K alpha, copper K alpha, molybdenum K alpha, and what their minimum wavelength and is a maximum D it can measure. Okay, so that means when we are, this is nanometer maximum. Okay, maximum D, so you can see maximum to minimum. So depending on your 2D spacing of the crystals, then you need to select your X-ray source for understanding, because you see, depending on the materials, your minimum and maximum D spacing it could measure with the help of different types of X-ray sources. So whenever we are using, it's not that abruptly you are using certain of your instruments for doing your data right. Okay, so that's why when we are going for a specific work, we should know, and this is most important part when you are doing something, because what you see, when people operate instruments, they may not be knowing the detail science behind it. But when you people are going for your master thesis or going for a research work or maybe any sort of work, your knowledge should be sufficient, so that when you are trying to start with your work, with the analysis or maybe something, you should know the instrument first, then you should go what should be the desired range of your accuracy, then on the basis of that you may set your instrument accordingly. Okay, so this is what is very important when we are going for any specific work. Okay, so the choice of step, I told you, just step size should be very small to get the desired accuracy. Okay, scanning in a 2 theta range is not continuous. So what, it is not a continuous value which we are recording. We are giving a generally what we give a angle range. Okay, so but the progressive steps, that means if your steps, that means it is a continuous step. It is 2 theta of this and less 2 theta of this. Okay, so that means 0.2, 0.02, 0.2, that means that is the step change. That means it is not continuous. It will give you then isolated value of a specific angle, then it will shift to next angle, what is called the step size. And what is the time required for step size? You're gathering the information, that will also you have to put. So choosing the step with a trade-off between accuracy and peak locations and peak intensity. So these are the most important part when we are going. So whenever, if you are going for any analysis, even in our solar instrument also, they will ask you what is the desired accuracy you want, from which angle to which angle you want, and what is the step size you wanted to get for your own sample. So that if once you know it, then you can properly give the specific or fill the form specifically. A large step width may lead to suppression of peak intensity. So this is what the problem with our data also. The rule of thumb is to use about 10 to 20 individual data points about a full width of a half maximum as marked. So it's another figure, I didn't put it. So what you need, so you see here what a step 0.02 degree. Okay, so 0.02 degree, and what is the time taken? You can give the times also, that this step should be taken for this time. This data should be recorded up to, or maybe of duration this time. So that is how we wanted to get the desired accuracy. Okay, so that means these are few things what you should take care. Your sample should be properly powdered. Okay, so diffraction spectrum is considered a fingerprint for identifying examined material. So I told you, so we use generally the standard graph for specific crystal or maybe known crystals. if you are not getting the accurate graph, so you may get some distortion in your aqueous spectra. So an aqueous spectrum should be compared with the standard form and X-ray diffraction database. So generally computer having the database of the standard value. But once you may have the same material, but once your samples are not properly prepared, or your acquisition steps and acquisition parameters not properly managed, so that's time, even if you have the standard value, you may not get the data from your own samples. Okay, so this is okay. So the standard spectrum has been collected from a pure powder sample with a fine powder size, usually several micrometers in diameter. So you would expect to match both peak locations and relative peak intensity between the aqueous spectrum and the standard if the sample is same substance as the standard. Matching relative intensities, however, is not always possible even when the examined specimen has the same crystalline structure as the standard. One reason for this discrepancy might be the existence of preferential crystal orientation in the samples. This often happens when we examine coarse powder or non-powder samples. Preferential orientation of crystals may even make certain peak invisible. So what is happening, you see, whenever we are even using the standard, let's say, samples, but our sample orientation is not proper, our size of the samples is not proper, so we may not get the exact or the peak which is for the standard. Okay, so that's why when we are using, we need to be very careful for this. Okay, so just few understanding regarding this. To obtain a satisfactory diffraction pattern, the following treatment of diffraction data treatment should be done. Okay, so you can smoothen out your spectrum data, locate peak position. So if your peak positions are here, but due to some reasons, I'll show you, your peak may shift either from this direction. It may be due to instrumental error. It may be due to your sample orientation when you are placing your samples, powder samples into your sample holder. Okay, so and strip K alpha 2 from the specimen, particularly for peaks in the mid value. So that means you need to take care when which type of your gamma source, X-ray source you are using for your instruments. Okay, so you see here the peaks are absolutely fine, and this is symmetrical peak. Okay, the full width hub maximum is here. So this is what it is called, the area under this peak. We'll discuss that area. Okay, so that will help us to sometime understand the quantitative analysis for a specific mixture of material. Okay, now crystalline size. Ideally, Bragg diffraction peak is a line without width as shown in figure below. Okay, without width generally, but in reality, diffraction from a crystal specimen produces a peak with a certain width as shown in figure. So this figure. Okay, so the peak width can result from instrumental factors and the size effect of the crystals. So you see line breadth, and this is the particle dimension. Once you are broadening your particle size, your peak width will also width. Okay, so this is your particle dimension. If you increase, your broadening of your peak should be there. Okay, so that actually, so small crystal cause the peak to be widened due to incompletely destructive interference. If you have a very small crystal, so it should be optimally broken down to a size of the crystals which is required for your specific instruments. Okay, or analysis. Then residual stress. What are the residual stress? You see, any factor that changes the D space. So you may this is the crystalline planes, crystal planes, and this is the spacing. If for anything no strain, you see the absolute fine peak with a specific no distortion. Okay, so here uniform strain, if your strain is uniform, that means you see here the D space is less, but it has been changed, but throughout this same. So your peak is not in the same position, it will shift, but still you get the specific type of peak, but it has been shifted. If you have a strain, this you see non-uniform strain is not uniform throughout, so the peak will be broadened as well as it may shift also in any direction. So any factor that changes the lattice parameter of crystalline specimens can also distort their X-ray diffraction pattern. Okay, so this is due to the residual stress which is still in the crystal structure, so that can change your XRD pattern also. Okay, so what are the disadvantages? I just told you when we were discussing. So your sample not powder fine enough, may give all despacing data. Analysis, if you are doing too fast, then your time and your step are not properly managed, may not give accurate peak data. Mixture of minerals may sometimes disturb your data anyway. Okay, and if you don't have any crystalline phase in your samples, that cannot give. So I'll just show you how. So this is the crystal phase identification. Once you are doing your data, when you match with your standard value, that time you can correlate and identify your crystals. Okay, it is that same crystals or not. This is the NaCl powder I just shown you earlier. So this will give you the proper 2 theta value. If it is coming, that means you can identify the specific your crystals. Okay, the third one is for quantitative analysis. You see, the quantitative analysis may be with the sets. It may be you are using external standard method, you are using internal standard method, in direct comparison method. Okay, so 3 peaks, safe X-rays, peak height proportional to the peak area. So here you see peak height is not proportional to the peak area, and here is also okay the peak area overlapping by other peaks. So actually you will get 3 peaks here. You see B and C. Okay, this is 2. So peak height is proportional to the peak area. The simple situations allow estimation of peak intensity by measuring peak height. So that also you need to understand actually the proper for quantitative analysis. Okay, so how we do it? Peak height is not proportional to the peak area. The common situation needs integration of peak area. So once you are not getting, so what you need to understand, my height is proportional to the peak area. That time I can only use the height of the peak to understand different minerals. So because we know this is mineral A, this is mineral B, this is mineral C. So once I understand this is mineral A, B, and C, and if the peak height is proportional to the peak area, then I can directly take the peak height intensity value and calculate the qualitative value, okay, quantitative value of the individual mineral present. Peak area is overlapped by other peaks. This is also frequently occurs, and profile fitting methods have to be used to distinguish. So if you take this 3 peak, sometimes you may not get the peak. So you need to completely get a one peak, broad peak. So that time what you have to separate individual components, and there you need to identify individual minerals. So sometimes deconvolution method also used to distinguish different peaks area, and then qualitatively analysis, quality analysis. Okay, so this is the samples I already discussed. These kaolinite samples, I'll just give you a few examples for your own analysis. Okay, so you see we can use it in X-ray, solid state physics, biophysics, medical physics, chemistry, biology. Everywhere you could use this XRD. You can understand each and every domain of our normal day-to-day activity, or doing some research work, or maybe any job we need to. Okay, so it is for a very fine level, fine structure to determine functions of the protein. Convenient 3-layer, so distinguish between different crystal structure with identical compositions, study different crystals, study of rapid. That means a huge application in our specific field. So this will help us to identify. So being a geoscientist or the engineers, our also having a great XRD has a great role to play in our own activity when you are planning for your master's thesis also. Okay, so this is what is most important for our XRD. I'll send you the okay. Thank you very much.
Sir, we mailed the